I'm over screwdrivers. They ruined the line of my jacket. These days I'm all about wearable technology. Yeah, it still sucks. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the first story of Series 9, The Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar, written by Stephen Moffat and is directed by Hetty MacDonald, who, if you don't know, she originally directed Blink, and that was her only Doctor Who story prior to this. So this was reuniting Stephen Moffat with the team that made Blink. So yeah, this was something to be really looking forward to. And as well, we might slightly talk about the two prequel episodes, Prologue and The Doctor's Meditation. Now, Series 9 was a series built up on the idea that fans have been begging for, is that, like classic series, stories full of multi-episode storylines. So, not per se like a story arc, but a story which takes more place than one episode. Very similar in case to the Sarah Jane Adventures. After many people criticised Stephen Moffat and Peter Capaldi's first run, Series 8, there was a massive thirst, shall we say, for two-parters, as in last series there was only one two-parter, which was the series finale, Dark Water and Death in Heaven. So the series was basically built up to be a series of full of two-parters, though that wasn't the case. There were some sort of standalone stories here, but this is the series that kicks off Series 9. Stories kicked off Series 9. And it also celebrates the 10-year anniversary of the revived era of Doctor Who. 5 years since Christopher Eccleston first opened those doors to Rose Tyler. So that was that's some really great historical significance right there. And in fact, this was actually supposedly a tribute to that, as prior to this episode being in production, Stephen Moffat had the basic idea and actually pitched the idea to Russell T Davies. Originally, Russell T Davies was going to write this story, and Russell T Davies had the idea of the Doctor and Davros basically being stuck. This story also features the Daleks and as well Davros, making his first appearance since Journey's End way back in Series 4 of the revived era. So yeah, originally Russell T Davies was tacked on to do the story, however he turned it down for various reasons. Don't exactly know what, but who's to say? And yeah, so this is a lot, there's a lot going for this. Also as well, I can't remember where I've got this from. I can't find anywhere on the internet, but I swear to God, when this series was being advertised, there was this kind of competition where we asked fans to make these short films of where they thought the 12th Doctor is, tying into the story from what we can gather from the trailers and stuff. I swear I've seen like a bunch of short films, and it's like an advertising campaign, like a hashtag thing, and like the winner gets their thing. But I can't find any information of this anywhere. Have I gone completely mental, or did this actually happen? I don't know. Before let's get into that, we have uniquely for Doctor Who, we have not one but two prequel episodes. Prologue felt like just a deleted scene. It was very strange, apart from the fact that when the characters talk, this also has the character Ophelia, I think her name is. She is the Doctor's friend, who he befriends in the Night of the Doctor short, the regeneration story of the 8th Doctor. So it was really cool to see her return into the main series proper, solidifying that short is canon, by extension Big Finish is canon, because he mentions his companions there. So basically you have Ophelia and Doctor talking, and it's really just kind of, it's clearly it's a deleted scene, and it's clearly why it was deleted. They constantly they talk like teasing like, I know who you're talking about, and I don't trust you. And the doctor's just like, okay, but I need you to deliver this, and you know who to deliver it to. There's a lot of that kind of dialogue, trying to keep the people who they're talking about vague, trying to set up a small little mystery for the episode itself. It doesn't really work. It's kind of needless, shall we say. There's nothing there that you would miss. The Doctor's meditation, however, I think was actually an interesting little short. It's essentially just the Doctor at his time during the Viking era, with a Middle Age era, and he befriends these characters we later see in the story proper, and the Doctor's trying to get his mindset to a particular point into his life, because he knows he's going to die, as in there is no way of avoiding it. He is going to die, and he needs to meditate, he needs to rest, he needs to prepare himself for his inevitable death. But he keeps distracting himself. He tries to get everybody, he gets everybody in the village to try and make him a well, and he distracts himself from the village, and he asks like wine and stuff. And he gets introduced to his character. I can't remember his name, but the banter between them is actually really well handled. It's not very long, and it's quite hard to find on the internet. I believe it's on the Series 9 box set. Highly recommend that if you haven't seen it. And it actually ends on a sort of cliffhanger where the Doctor goes through his memories. He's having a flashback to a terrible war, one of the worst wars that he's ever witnessed. And something has happened during this war that has made him completely rethink his life, to the point where he needs to accept at least a version of his death, let's say. And so that actually leads, it's kind of really shot, because you see the start of the flashback and then the credits roll. It does seem really odd edited wise, but it does help, and it does introduce some interesting characters that do play part in the episode, even if it's very small, very slight little impact on the actual episode itself. So let's get into the episode at hand. And the pre-credit sequence, I remember. Okay, actually, before I get into that, I need to go into a discussion about something, because Series 9 is something that actually I have really a personal connection to, per se. Because, Doctor Who is something that it's a thing a lot of people like and a lot of people enjoy, but it's also something incredibly nerdy, geeky. And it's something that for a long time I've watched, like with my uncle a few times or with my family, but mainly it's like for me, per se, I'm watching it for myself. With Series 9, when it was first aired, we had something different. My mate, who I will not name, he actually did this thing where he invited everybody to his house, all of our mates, all the people who really enjoy Doctor Who, and we had this just blast of a time up his house every week, when Doctor Who aired, when Doctor Who was on, and we basically turned it into this event. And so I was watching Doctor Who with just a bunch of people who really had a passion for it, and we would talk over, we would laugh over certain bits and take the mick out of stuff that we didn't like. It was just an absolute ball. And I know a lot of people didn't like this series, and particularly this story, but I just have really good memories of it. And I do feel like that kind of maybe blinds my judgment, per se, but the memories of those moments will always stick to me as some of my favourite Doctor Who moments, not because of something the actual episode did itself, but for more the community that it brought around with me and my mates. So I just wanted to point that out. But anyway, back into the episode itself, and we get into the war that was previously teased upon, and we see this kid, and he's basically trapped at a certain point because these things that come out of the ground, and the Doctor hands him his sonic screwdriver. He throws his sonic screwdriver at him, which creates a sort of echo so that he and the Doctor can communicate. And the Doctor is trying to help this child, telling him that it's a 1 in a million chance that you're going to live this, but that's all you need, the one chance. Come on, so help me out here, we could be friends now, right? Just tell me your name, trying to get communication, trying to get a connection with this child, only for the child to reveal his name. Davros. His name is Davros. And so that shot where the 12th Doctor zooms up on the 12th Doctor's face, brilliant. Hetty MacDonald really knows how to shoot Peter Capaldi, just absolutely stunning. This also introduces Capaldi's new curly, he has like longer hair compared to his previous series. We'll talk about Capaldi later on in the episode, because in the first half of the first episode, he's hardly in it. The majority of the story is about Clara interacting with UNIT after there's this massive incident around the world and tracking down Missy, who was previously shown to have been killed in the episode Death in Heaven. However, here, just like the Master does, comes out of death seemingly unscathed. And right off the bat, I didn't even realise this until rewatching it for this marathon. This is quite possibly the weirdest, the oddest story I have ever witnessed in Doctor Who. It's utterly bizarre. So Missy's plan, right, is she freezes all of these planes all over the world, like they're all stuck in mid-air, seemingly as a parlor trick, but she uses this to communicate with, as kind of hostages, as she tries to communicate to Clara to try and find a doctor, per se. And that sounds like a complete story right there. A story where the Missy, or the Master, has every plane on the planet as her hostage. That sounds like a brilliant idea. But it's literally like the first 10 minutes of the episode. And as well, there's just some really, really odd scenes. There's a scene which, every time I talk about this episode, everybody has the exact same reaction, which is, I completely forgot this happened. Is she's talking to UNIT on the screen, and suddenly her head comes out of the screen and is absolutely obnoxious. And everybody's panicking, shitting themselves, because, yes, a giant head just came out of the screen, and they're all like, what the hell? How did she do that? It's a psychic projection. And then after that, it's never mentioned again. Not even in the same scene. It's... what? It's... what? That's so bizarre. And Clara actually communicates with Missy, and this story has a really... we learn about this confession dial. Essentially, the Doctor's will and testimony. And according to Gallifreyan culture, according to Missy, the confession dial will only is given to the Doctor's most loyal and trusted friend, and as well that it will only open when the Doctor is dying. So the Doctor has given this confession dial to Missy, believing not that they're his best friend, but one of his closest friends, known to her since the early days of Gallifrey. And Missy can't open it and needs Clara's help to find him. And throughout this episode, you're constantly acting hold on, you're constantly thinking in the back of your head, hold on, isn't that the woman that killed your boyfriend? The last time you saw her, you were willing to kill her just on the basis that she tortured, killed, and made people's lives absolutely horrible for billions of people, including your boyfriend, Clara. She killed your boyfriend. And this story, and the relationship between them, though they have this really fun, quirky dynamic, even though Clara does become kind of one note throughout the episode, as she kind of gets sidelined and it becomes what she was in series 7, where she is constantly just asking questions, and is just stunned by everything. Wow, amazing everything. As she basically becomes Missy's companion throughout the story. Again, very strange, this partnering up, especially considering their relationship with each other in the previous story that they appeared in. But they tracked down the Doctor using this method, which I must be honest, I really just didn't understand. Track down all those moments in history where the Doctor made the most noise, but there was no incident. However, when we watched this episode, there was an incident that it was going to happen regardless if Clara and Missy were going to appear in it anyway. It's really strange. And, okay, we're going to have to talk about the 12th Doctor now, because when Series 8 was advertised and Peter Capaldi took on the role, there was this inkling, or at least this desire, to make this Doctor a more darker, much more serious incarnation. Series 8, however, wasn't well received. And one of the big aspects that a lot of people had issue with is, or at least in a general sense, even though I think the topic is a lot more complicated and a lot more details to understand. But if you generalize it, it's basically that the whole darker Doctor didn't really work. That the series didn't click per se, and it felt a bit forced, and certain scenes and certain ways of the dialogue didn't work. I do argue that there are scenes that did really work, like the ending of Kill the Moon, and stories like Mummy on the Orient Express and Flatlined really show this darker Doctor to perfection. But the idea, of course, was that the series misstepped, and one of the big missteps is the darker Doctor. So, when it was time to bring back Capaldi and bring back the series, it was decided that the Doctor would have a complete character change. Essentially, Peter Capaldi treats this like it's a completely different incarnation. Gone is the mysterious, the more quiet, the more streamlined Doctor, shall we say? A Doctor who's not as quirky as his predecessors. A Doctor who thinks things more logistically, might make some jokes, but maybe out of taste, and is hell-bent on just getting everybody focused for the mission at hand. Replaced with, essentially, your crazy uncle who moved to Vegas and never got married. As he's got like these pajamas on, he's got these sunglasses. The first scene that we see with him, which a lot of people criticise as being one of the moments that made him stop watching Doctor Who, Peter Capaldi comes, the Doctor comes out of this stadium coming out of a giant tank, playing the guitar. Now, of course, this collides with Peter Capaldi's real interest, because he can actually play the guitar. He was actually in a punk band, during the 80s or the 90s. I can't remember which, but he was in a punk band, and that was like one of his interests. In fact, in many interviews, he stated like he was a massive kid, fan of Doctor Who. He's obsessed with Doctor Who until he found his love for punk rock. And so it was kind of felt like the characterization here blended with what his role with is Doctor Who. Now, for people who really liked his interpretation in Series 8, this was a massive disappointment. Going back to a much more quirky, forensic Doctor that, though it's not similar, it is in line with Matt Smith and David Tennant, where it's, and I think a lot of people were kind of hoping to see a different kind of Doctor. And for the first series, we did kind of get that. But here, Capaldi goes full on Doctor quirky, if that makes sense. And it's it's really jarring, especially when you're rewatching every story back to back to back. I mean, his doctor's always had this inkling of funny and quirkiness, but to this extent, it's really strange and bizarre. Though I do think he does a fantastic job here, and I do think this version of the Doctor does actually work. It's just, it doesn't feel like the 12th Doctor that we were introduced to. It felt like there's a complete series missing here where he becomes this version of the Doctor, if that makes sense. But anyway, I forgot to mention that we do get introduced to a character called Colony Snarf, played by Rami Rad Orel, I'm probably butchering his name. Now, his character is only here to basically set up the mystery of where is the Doctor, as he goes around, first of all, in the story. Oh, also, again, really strange, there's a lot of strange cameos in this story. We get a cameo from the Shadow Proclamation, an Ood, a character from the Sarah Jane Adventures makes a cameo in this story. And also this Colony Staff introduces himself to Ophelia, which is where she comes into it, basically asking where is the Doctor throughout the universe. And that's basically all of his plot, and he doesn't really have that much to do, but there's something about him I just absolutely love, from his performance to this really strange, simple design at first, and he's got these kind of lines until it's revealed that he is actually like a snake, like a proper snake, and his way he speaks with these long S's and these whispers, and he refers to Davros as the Dark Lord of Skaro. There's something so watchable about him. I can't really put my finger on it, but I really like this interpretation. Now, the first episode is about to come to an end. Essentially, the Doctor gets captured by Colony Staff, and he also takes Clara and Missy with him against the Doctor's wishes, and he takes them to see Davros, to which then Davros reveals that he's made this planet that they're on invisible, and it's revealed that the planet they're on is actually a rebuilt Skaro, and we see different designs of the Daleks, but not like in Asylum of the Daleks where they're dusty and you can't tell and they're in the background. We get like full on, like front of the camera, classic Daleks designs from the 70s, the 80s, the 60s. We even see a better look, shall I say, not a good look, but a better look of the special weapons Dalek, although this time it was a new prop design because they actually had it light up. You know, like the Daleks speak, the light up, that appears into it. We also have the Supreme Dalek from Journey's End making a reappearance in the story. So that's really cool. And as a fan, it was really cool to see. I also like how the Skaro is designed to look like how it did in its first appearance in the first ever Dalek story, The Daleks. With those kind of really strange corridors, you know, when it's like bigger on one side than the other. It's just something that's absolutely memorizing and a great attention to detail. Now, you might notice something, the plot, the actual episode itself, what the story is trying to tell, what it's trying to do, hasn't actually started yet. Throughout, all episode 1 is just set up for episode 2. Now, I know a lot of people aren't too keen on this, feeling that episode 1 is a dull, but I actually really enjoyed episode 1. It has a lot of stuff that it just does get you interested. There's a lot of stuff which I can't really explain, but I really did have a ball with it. Episode 2, however, I feel is kind of a mixed bag. The story basically has now 2 plot lines going with each other. The Doctor basically teams up with, basically has a bunch of dialogue with Davros, and Davros basically explains he is dying. He remembers how this incarnation saved him as a kid. He also shows him clips of previous encounters with Davros, as we see the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th and 10th Doctors appearing on screen. So that was really cool to see those clips. One of them actually sticks out. It's actually the 4th Doctor holding the wires. You know, that infamous scene where the Doctor comes up with this hypothetical where if you see this child and somebody turned to you and said that that child would grow up to be an evil dictator, a ruthless dictator who'd kill millions of lives, could you then kill that child? And this story actually kind of tries to give an answer to that, which completely goes against that scene. The point of that scene is that there is no right answer per se. There's only two really dark, really not good options. There is no answer to that. But this story does make a claim for it. And though it is a very controversial one, and the story basically said, yes, if you're in this situation, you should go this route. What makes this story really work and what makes these stories so interesting is the dialogue between the Doctor and Davros, as their relationship basically gets broken down, with the Doctor even admitted at one point he's not the Doctor. He's just some guy who got bored of his planet one day and decided to steal a TARDIS, a vehicle, and just explore. And he hopes that and he came to Skaro, he came to Davros not because of any guilt or any shame, because a little shame didn't hurt anyone. I love that line. But because some days, on some brilliant days, he can be the Doctor. And then you've got Davros basically explaining this whole philosophy of the Daleks and how he basically tried to create the perfect race who would honour all of his code, all of it, to protect one's own, to fight off everyone else. And he kind of starts seeing that in the Doctor. There's a fantastic moment. I think everybody praises this story for this moment where Davros basically breaks down, starts crying to the Doctor, Doctor basically explains that he saved Gallifrey. He prevented destroying all of Gallifrey. He found out they're lost from Davros, from the Daleks, and even from the Doctor possibly. But they're out there, they're safe, they survived. And the Davros is like, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. My feelings for this are genuine. And Davros starts crying. He actually opens up his true eyes to look at the Doctor for a moment. And the Doctor and Davros kind of have a heart-to-heart moment. It's something it's so strange. It's so weird. But it really works. And it's really one of the great highlights of the story. What's not a highlight is the story between Missy and Clara. Now, don't get me wrong. Michelle Gomez and Jenna Louise Coleman are the main reason that those scenes absolute work. But when it cuts to them in this story, it's basically just explaining away certain details, like how Daleks don't actually die, but they do decay, and so they have this kind of sewer / graveyard which they keep all of their deceased, all of their departed. And there's also this bafflingly god-awful scene where they take a mutant out of the Dalek casing and put Clara in it. And we learn that the casing actually kind of changes what the Dalek says and how the Dalek feels, and to the point where Clara says at one point, I love you, because she has a very strong hatred emotion, because the Dalek casing is saying exterminate when she's saying I love you, and it's stressing her out, it shoots the gun. So, canonically, it is entirely possible that every Dalek story has been them trying to tell people that they love them. That is so bafflingly dumb. It's so bafflingly dumb. And but that plotline only really just there to set up this idea of the Doctor. He's basically about to kill this Dalek who he doesn't realise is Clara in it. After something happens, Davros tries to steal the Doctor's regeneration era energy after explaining, basically just randomly going into detail about the mystery box of this series, which is the hybrid, which we'll get on to when we talk about later stories, but the whole hybrid idea is just so ridiculously dumb. The story arc really doesn't work, but it's kind of funny, and especially like Davros just randomly rants about it. It's really strange. It's really odd. And there's but then basically because of the regeneration era, all of the Daleks in the sewers are getting regenerated, and it's starting to leak up into the surface and starts destroying and raging against all of the prime Daleks, shall we say. But yeah, and we get the scene where the Doctor's holding a gun to this to what he thinks is a Dalek, which is actually Clara in a Dalek casing. And Clara's trying to tell him, it's like, it's me, Doctor, it's me, it's Clara. Well, it's the Dalek casing is saying, it is me, I am a Dalek. And you can clearly see why Stephen Moffat wrote that scene where it's like, it changes the way she speaks, because otherwise this scene really just doesn't work. And it's so forced to try and get into a situation where the Doctor was almost about to kill Clara, thinking that she is a Dalek, but the setup is something that destroys the canonicity, the whole idea of Daleks, because they're space Nazis. It's their ideology that makes them scary, and saying the casing keeps their ideology is just so dumb. But however, Clara got the Dalek to say mercy. The Dalek casing to say mercy, and the Doctor doesn't understand how that could be in its vocabulary, so he clicks in, this is Clara, and so they escape, leaving escaping the TARDIS. But before that, we get introduced to the sonic sunglasses. After, in this story, basically it's the end of the sonic screwdriver to a point. The one that was first seen in the 11th hour in this story was basically given to Davros as a sort of thing to remember the Doctor by at that moment. And it's only until this recent incarnation did it click that this person that he met as a kid and this person he meets now are the same person, this time traveller that's been foiling him at every step of his turn. So the sonic screwdriver is dissipated. We get introduced to the sonic sunglasses, which it's one of those moments where I just remember being in a room, apart from one guy, everybody absolutely hated it, and we just all eye rolled, and we just like, this is so stupid. The sonic they're not even like, they're just normal sunglasses. It's so cheap. It's so dull, and it's so clearly like, everything must be quirky. It's the quirky Doctor, sonic sunglasses. But I will admit, over time, it's not that I don't not like it, but I don't hate it as much as I did back then. I just find it now as just this really strange detail that got introduced in a really, really batshit insane story. But at the end of the story, the Doctor is like, how did the Daleks know about the words mercy? It shouldn't be in their vocabulary. And so the Doctor goes back in time and actually saves the young Davros from that bit. At the start of the story, we see him that he actually abandons Davros at that point, not wanting to be in that situation. And in the cliffhanger for the first episode, we actually see the Doctor holding a gun to the young Davros. Basically, it's like claiming the Doctor's going to go too far, but nobody actually believed it. But it was a really striking cliffhanger, even though it was clearly rubbish. The Doctor would never threaten to kill a child. Even like in this hypothetical idea, that's the whole point of the Doctor. He wouldn't kill a child, but he knows like the horrible consequences of their actions. So yeah, but this story has Doctor saving the child, basically saying that if you saw a child and somebody told you that that child was totally evil, that would grow up to become a ruthless dictator and destroy millions of lives, should you then kill that child? The story says no, you shouldn't. Though it's really cool that the story does tackle the heavy idea more provokingly, it becomes its main subject matter. I think where this story really fails in that department is actually giving a definitive answer to the question, because it completely dilutes what the question, what makes it so interesting is that it's not an easy answer. You can't just, forget about the millions of people that this child will grow up to eventually kill, harm, or ruin the lives of. But that's just me. And that is The Magician's Apprentice, The Witch's Familiar, the prologue, and the Doctor's Meditation. Overall, in my opinion, this story is so weird. It's so strange. It's one of the things, the more I watch it, the more weird, strange details and odd moments that I realise will stick out on my memory. Like when we first see a classic Dalek and it's really well designed. It's so classic accurate. The exceptions of the bulbs are for some reason higher up on the head and looks like bunny ears. And for some reason none of the other Daleks have this kind of weird design. It's only that one, and none of the Daleks never used to look like that. It's really strange and off-putting. And yeah, sorry, that scene is just remembering that. It's just really bizarre. However, I will say, it's never dull. Though I know a lot of people say that the first episode's dull because it's just setup after setup after setup and nothing much happens. There's so much weird stuff happening that it keeps me interested. And because, again, I know this is not fair per se, but because I have such a fond memory of watching this story for the first time, it is actually one of my favourite stories to rewatch and just have a ball with it. It's an absolute blast. It introduces some stupid concepts. It introduces some amazing concepts like deepening the character of Davros per se. But overall, taking my personal feelings out of it, I think it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of great stuff and a lot of bad stuff. Mostly bad, but it's entertaining. And Hetty MacDonald's directing the story, so that's really cool. So yeah, that is The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. So join me next time when the Doctor... Okay, I'm taking these off. Join me next time when the Doctor and Clara find themselves in a underlake base as they starting to see one of the greatest supernatural phenomenons appear right before their eyes, as every time somebody dies, they get resurrected as transparent, untangible creatures. They become the living dead. They become ghosts. So join me next time for Under the Lake and Before the Flood. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!